Okay, we're on 5A. Um, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 lines down, Lema Masile. So we said yesterday, we're talking about if a person who is a mumar for one thing, and specifically we talked about Avodah Zarah, among others, can his shechita be trusted? And Rabbanan said um, that yes, someone who's mumar lavodah zara, his shlita is fine. And now the Gemara continues to discuss. Lema Masaile, maybe we can have another support for Rabbanan. V'ha'arvim mevim l'lechem v'basar b'boker v'lechem v'basar ba'erev. This is Eliyahu Navi when he was in hiding. Hashem sent ravens to bring him bread and meat every morning and every evening for him to eat. Where do the ravens get meat? They got it from Achav's kitchen. So obviously Hashem is going to feed Eliyahu kosher meat, and if it came from Achav's kitchen, it sounds like Achav could be trusted for kashrus, even though he's an Oved Avodah Zarah. So Gemara says, "Al Piyah Divrei." Okay, well, maybe it wasn't kosher. Maybe this was like a dispensation from God, telling Eliyahu to eat this meat, even though it came from the kitchen of Achav and would not ordinarily be trusted. Maybe you could say that.
Ravens be
Okay,
trusted for kashrut.
pardon me. Ravens can be
A
trusted. Well, we'll
raven be
see.
trusted. A bird can be trusted for kashrut.
How do you figure?
Well, it was the birds who delivered it. How do we know they didn't substitute treif meat?
Well, that's what the Gemara says, that they got. The Gemara testifies, as it were, that they got the meat from Achav's kitchen. So you can
Yeah,
ask in general, how did Eliyahu know that? Okay, so then that's actually why the Gemara's answer makes sense. So if he figures that God is sending him meat, it's the best hashgacha you could get. Or it doesn't need hashgacha, or God is sending him meat with a special dispensation that he can eat it. And this would not be the only place, by the way, that the Torah gives a dispensation for eating non-kosher meat. Anybody know what I mean? The 7 years, the 14 years of conquering and dividing up the land of Israel in the time of Yehoshua, the Gemara says, I can't remember which Masechta, but the Gemara says they were allowed to eat whatever food they found. Didn't have to be kosher. From the pasuk, V'achaltem, something like mituv haaretz or something. The Torah says, eat what you find there. So the Gemara takes this as a dispensation. They didn't have to eat kosher for 14 years. Okay, side point. I always found that when I still remember my amazement when I came across that Gemara, like, really, 14 years of no kashrus, like, wow, that's crazy. And on the inauguration, like on the coming into Eretz Yisrael, today, if you would expect, it has to be Eretz Yisrael, has to be, the settlement has to be founded, Al Taharas HaKodesh, everything should be most meticulous, but no, it's quite the opposite. Anyway, in times of war, then you have a whole different attitude to how to properly what proper behavior is. Okay. Now the Gemara just goes off on a bit of an investigation of this incident with Eliyahu. My Arvim, what is this Arvim? So we translated as birds, ravens. Ravina Arvim Mamish. Ravina says yes, they were actually birds brought them the food. Vidilma Tre Gavre Dahavu Shemayu Arvim. Maybe it was two people named Orev. Right, so the two Orevs brought him food. Milo Ksiv, and he proves it that showing that Orev is actually a name used in Tanakh. Vayargu is Orev Bitsur Orev V'Yeszev. They killed. This is a battle. I can't remember where in Shoftim. They killed Orev, who was one of the opponents. Amarle Isramai Milsa de Tarvayu Havushmayu Arvim. Like, you think that could happen, that there's like two guys that happen to be named Orev? No, it makes more sense that they're birds. Vidilma al Shem Makoman. Okay, so maybe it wasn't their name. Maybe they came from a place called Orev, so they're called Orvim. Like you would say New Yorkers. Maybe, or let's see, whatever, you got it. Maybe they came from a place called Orev. Miloksi Varam Yatsu Gedudim Vayishbu Me'eretz Yisrael Nara Katana. So there's a story of Aram capturing a child or a girl, Vakashalan, Kori le Nara, Vakari le Katana. She's called Nara Katana, a small girl. Well, those that's like repetitious. It's synonymous. Yamaravi Padas, Katana to mean Nara. No, it's not what it means. It doesn't mean a small girl. It means a girl from Nara. Okay. So the same way we could say um, Orev is a place. And Orvim are people from Orevim came. Orviyim mibaile. No, then it would be spelled wrong. It would be if it were people from Orev, two people from Orev would be called Orviyim with two yits. Okay, so we're back to birds. Let's have another support for Rabbanan. Hakol shachtim, afilu kuti, vafilu arel, vafilu Yisrael mumar. The Brisa says everybody can do shchita, even the uncircumcised person, Jewish person, even a rebellious person, a Jew, and feel or feel did I miss something? Yeah, feel kusi or kusi. Hi, Ariel Mechitani. What kind of uncircumcised person are we talking about? If he's not circumcised because of a a suspected genetic condition that it's dangerous for him, because his brothers died from Mila, so he doesn't have to get Mila. So there's no reason not to trust the Shechita. He's a Frum Yid. He doesn't have a Bris Mila because he's not supposed to have a Bris Mila. So certainly you should trust the Shechita. El Pshita Mumar La Relos means somebody who is for no good reason decides he's not going to have a bris milah, and that so the Bryce is saying that person can do shchita. Amos Seif, and now look at the end of the Bryce, Afilu Yisrael Mumar, even a rebellious Jew. Hechidami, who are we talking about? Imumar l'davar echad. If it's rebellious for one thing, hainu mumar la. So we already said, we already gave an example of somebody who's a mumar for one thing, the arel. Elalav mumar lavav kochavim must be something. He's a mumar in a more significant way, in a different way, which is for avodas kochavim, which is foundational. Look at Ravanan. So this would accord with Ravanan that even a mumar lavos kochavim can do shchita. Mars says lo. No, you're not interpreting the brisa right. Lo. You could say that this brisa holds that a mumar Yisrael mumar can do davar echad can do shchita, but not if it's a mumar lavos kochavim. So what's the story here? Shekol. Marsh Chamura was Kochavim, Shekal Kofa Komoda B'chol Kula. And why is Avos Kochavim different? Because if you worship idols, then you're like undermining the whole Torah. So you could say that.
It's Kofar Baker.
Yeah, yeah. So Elamumar Lo Sodavar. So it must be. So if we're not talking about mumar for a general thing, and we're not talking about mumar for a specifically terrible thing like a vazar, what are we talking about? Mumar for what? Must be a mumar for shchita. In other words, why can you? What's the Mishnah talking about? Somebody who doesn't eat kosher meat himself can still do shchita with a Rava, and it could be like Rava who says exactly that. So it's not a proof for Ravanan. It's not a proof.
What is he a mumar for? He's mumar for just the shchita?
Yes.
So he doesn't believe in shchita. He says it. I mean,
he doesn't himself eat kosher meat.
But we allow him to do the shchita, or we don't.
Well, yeah. So this brisa, you could say this brisa says, even so, he could do shchita. And we said yesterday we had a similar thing, and we said, well, it must be that it's not a mumar lahachis. It's just, sorry, it's a mumar, not a mumar lahachis, but a mumar l'teyavon, right? So that it's like, okay, he eats non-kosher, but he's not dafka eating non-kosher. It's more convenient, or he likes the taste better, or whatever. He would rather he'll eat non-kosher, but if he has the opportunity to choose between kosher and non-kosher, he'll choose kosher. So that's what we said yesterday. That kind of person, you can rely on the shechita, because it's just as easy for him to do shechita properly as to do it improperly.
And once he knows how to do shechita, then he would do it properly. I mean, why would he not do it?
That's what the Brisa is saying. But you could also say, I thought you would go the opposite way, Ken. I thought you would say, what, the guy doesn't eat kosher himself, we're going to rely on the shechita? I don't think so. Right? That would be.
Well, I mean, I could say that, but I'm saying once he knows how to do shechita, he does it properly. Why would he not do it properly?
Good. So that's one possible interpretation of the brisa, that because it's just as easy for him to do it properly, then he doesn't specifically want it to be not kosher. He's happy to have it kosher. He just doesn't really care if he eats kosher or not. But if he has the opportunity, if it's just as easy to do the shechita properly or not properly, you assume he'll do it properly. There's no reason to think that he would do it improperly.
I mean, if your other point, there are people that work in kosher restaurants. They're Jewish people, but they themselves, listen, they work there. It's a job for them, but they themselves, they don't eat kosher at home.
Right. Okay, so the question is, could they be the mashgiach? So I think the OU would probably say, not really.
No, probably not.
Okay. Meisvei. Last question, again, about the same topic of Rabbanan. Can a mumar la'avodos kochavim be trusted with shchita? Mikem. The Torah says, Ish mikem asher yakriv, Ish asher yakriv mikem karban, a person from you who brings a karban. V'lo kulchem means Ish mikem means certain people, not all people. Lahotzias mumar, who's excluded? The mumar, the renegade. Mikem also teaches Bachem Chilakti Velo Ba'umos. God says, I'm making a distinction between a mumar and a non-mumar, between a firm Jew and a not firm Jew. That distinction I only make among you, the Jewish people, but not among other people. So, meaning that that a Ovid Kochavim, since we know that Ovid Kochavim can bring an Adava as a karban, it doesn't matter what the theological status is, what the belief of that person is, or whether he is a sinner or not. We distinguish among Jews, but not among non-Jews. Non-Jews can bring this karban, then any non-Jew can bring it.
But can he do the shechita?
Oh, we're not talking about that yet.
Okay.
We're getting there. Okay, first let's see what the Bryce has to say. Mina behema, some animals from the animals lahavi b'nei adam shadomim lebehema. That includes, like, it's not only saying you have to bring it from the korban is an animal korban, but even if colloquially said, like, even if the person who brings it is an animal, in other words, he's not. He doesn't behave well, he can still bring a karban. Mikan amru, mekabelin karbanos miposhe Yisrael, kedei sheyachzur v'hen b'tshuva. We accept karbanos from sinners so that they might repent. So in tshuva, chutz min hamumar. However, this does not include someone who is a renegade, umenaseh chaseyayin, someone who drinks, who like worships avodah zarah through wine, through wine offerings, umuchal Shabbos b'parhesia, and someone who desecrates Shabbos publicly. So Gemara says, "Agufa kasha." Wait, you're contradicting yourself. Amarta mikem v'lo kulchem. The first thing you said was only that there's some Jews are excluded. Lotias a mumar, to exclude a mumar who can't bring a karban. V'hadartani, and then the end of the brisa says, "B'kabelin karbanos from poshe Yisrael." We do accept karbanos from sinners. So what's going on here? Holokasha. That's not contradictory, says Gemara. Reisha mumar l'haTorah kula. The mumar that's excluded is someone who denies the whole Torah. Right? He's completely not observant of mitzvahs. And the middle part of the Bryce is talking about someone who is mumar l'davar echad, for he only does one thing, ignores one mitzvah. Now ema seifa, what about the end? Except for a mumar and someone who offers libations to avodah zarah and desecrates Shabbos publicly. What kind of mumar are we talking about here? It can't be talking about a completely someone who completely doesn't practice mitzvahs, because that we already talked about in the first part of the brisa. If we're talking about just one thing, kasha mitziyasa, we're already talking about in the second part. This is what it means. These exceptions here, that you can accept them, is a person who is a mumar with regard to libations to avodah zarah and desecrating Shabbos. Those are the only things that he does wrong. Alma mumar lavos kochavim have a mumar l'chol Torah kula. So So we see that someone who is, and that includes someone who offers libations to avodah zarah is an avodah zarah. That's mumar l'avodah zarah, and we see that we do accept the end of the rice is we do accept korbanos from them. So that utyufta d'Ravanan. Um, one second. Um, I think it's saying that that ordinarily we wouldn't like technically we shouldn't allow this person to bring a carbon because he's a mumar l'avodah zarah because he brings these nesachim to avodah zarah, but because we want to encourage tshuva, we'll allow it. Okay, so doesn't this contradict Ravanan? Ravanan says in principle a person who's avodah zarah can do shchita or is considered a mumar. L'chol Torah kula.
But we're making that distinction from the Reisha. The Reisha is saying that a mumar l'chol Torah kula is apparently is not a mumar l'avodah zarah. That we want to exclude that as something separate, right? Or no?
Yeah, exactly. It's just a Ravanan, unlike Ravanan. So this does indeed um, contradict Ravanan. Ravanan wanted to say Mumar Lavo Zara is not so bad as Mumar Lachol Torah Kula, and you can accept his shchita. Here we're saying that Mumar Lavo Zara is the same as Mumar Lachol Torah Kula, and therefore the conclusion should be you do not accept his shchita. Okay.
This is Rabbanan. Rav Anan.
Yeah. Anan, yes, right.
So he's not the Rabbanan.
No, not Rabbanan,
I
but
know.
Rav Anan. His
So
name
that's
is
just
Anan.
one person.
Rabbi Anan. Yeah.
Right. That's one person.
One person. That's
But
right. That's whose opinion we've been trying to support or break down for the last Amud.
So are we saying here then that Mishumad Me'umar לעבודה זרה זה כאילו כופר בעיקר, כופר בכל התורה כולה?
Yeah.
But isn't that the Reisha? Because we said the Reisha is called a Torah kula, right?
Right. And then the end it tells you that what about a numeral davar echad, which is avodah zara? So we're understanding that that is as bad as numeral chalatar kula, but we leave the door open for him because we want him to do tshuva. But in principle, the idea is that and he can bring a carbon. But the idea is still that such a person is considered a mumar for kol kula, and if that's the case, then Ravanan is wrong, right? That mumar avodos kachavim should not be relied on for shchita because you don't have the maybe he'll do tshuva. Maybe this will inspire him to do tshuva. To bring a carbon might inspire him to do tshuva. So that's why the Brisa makes an exception. But no, that doesn't mean that until he does tshuva that we should rely on the shchita. He's still considered a mumar l'chol tarakula.
But he could bring the korban.
Yes.
So a question about this. I mean, other kashrut is not the same as shchita, but we have a lot of kosher restaurants that are run by non-observant Jews.
Okay.
And no less a figure than Rav Aaron Cutler allowed a bakery that was run by a man who was not Shomer Shabbat.
Okay. But did he say it didn't require any kind of supervision?
Well, there's supervision. I don't know whether there was a shkiach tamini that would probably make it not financially viable. I know this directly from the daughter of that baker.
Okay, so obviously
there's a leniency regarding pot palter. There's throughout halacha. There's a leniency by bread.
Right, that's for non-Jewish bread. You need. Anyway, that's just a question. It may be that we
obviously,
are more.
Obviously, when it comes to specific situations, there are a lot of factors that go into it, and as you said, you're talking about other issues with kashrus. We're just discussing the principle of shchita.
Yeah.
But you can, obviously you can draw some conclusions, but like I said, every situation has multiple factors, and so it's a good data point. But I don't know if we can if we can draw conclusions about what the specifics were in that case, or what
What
the
do we do
consideration.
here with uh, the Halal Shabbat, the Nesek Yain Nesek? So in the end, where does that person fit?
The Mechalel Shabbat. So
Right.
ordinarily we would say that Mumar Ladavar Echad. Um, so I think, yeah, it's a good question. Maybe the Gemara doesn't address it here, but maybe Chilul Shabbos B'Farhesya is in the same category as Avodah Zarah in the sense that a person who violates that might be considered on the same level as someone who is completely, who's Mumar L'Chol Torah Kula. That's what it sounds like, but the
The
Gemara
Gemara
doesn't
the
address that at
Gemara
all.
doesn't really say that though, and
Right, we're not
it
interested in
carves
that.
this out. The Mechalel Shabbat b'Farhesia and Nesek Yain, it carves that out as something separate from the other topics.
Right, right. So that's why I say, the Gemara is not interested in that here. Here we're interested in the issue of Avodah Zarah and how to treat that. So the Gemara does not expand on Chilul
Right.
Shabbos b'far Hesia, but it sounds like, that is similar. Why are they lumped together in the same rule? It sounds like just that they're both Mumar for Nisu Chayayin and Mumar for Chilul Shabbos b'far Hesia would both be something that you would ordinarily consider to be Mumar L'Chol Torah Kula, or on the same level. But we make an exception. That person can still bring a korban in order to encourage him or to do tshuva.
Well, I would think that person could do tshuva. I mean, it seems
Of
logical. If a
course,
person
yeah.
doesn't know
Person can
about
always do
whatever
tshuva.
Shabbat, we would think, and he learns about it, he could do tshuva.
Yeah, uh, absolutely. Okay, Vaha Mehachanafka. So, question mark. Vaha Mehachanafka, is it the case that um, that this brisa that talks about who can bring who's prohibited from bringing a carbon? The brisa got it from the word mikem, but the Gemara said, wait a minute. So elsewhere we used a different derivation, me'am haaretz. If this is a pasuk in Vayikra, Parshat Vayikra, if a person from Am Haaretz, from the people, sins, then he brings this carbon. Prat lumumar. Me'am Haaretz is a minimization, right? It's like from the people, but not all the people. Who's excluded? The mumar. Rabbi Shimon ben Yossi Omer Mishum Rabbi Shimon Ashelo Te'asana Bishkag Aviyashem. Now it says we get this from one of the mitzvos that you're not supposed to do. He does it by accident, and he's guilty. Hashav midiaso, somebody who, if he realized what he was doing, then he would have refrained from doing it. Maybe carbon al shigaso. He brings a carbon. Ish eno shav midiaso. But a person who, true, he's doing this accidentally, but if he knew he was doing it, he would have gone ahead anyway because he's a mumar for that thing. Then eno maybe carbon al shigaso. That's not considered a shogeg. You don't bring a carbon as a shogeg. And we said, my benai, what's the practical difference between these two views? Amar Rav Hamnuna, mumar lechol chela vehevi carbon al hadam ika benai. The difference, nafkamina, would be someone who's a mumar for eating chalev, and the sin he did was eating blood. Okay, so according to the first view, he can't bring the carbon because he's a mumar. He's a mumar for something else other than the blood, but he's still a mumar. According to Rav Shimon Rav Yossi, no, it's only the mumar for the same thing for the sin that he committed accidentally. If he's a mumar for that thing, then he brings a carbon. If he's a mumar for something else, then he does bring a carbon. So anyway, it seems like the psukim that we use to derive this from are different than we said the Brisa said before. So where it says chada b'chatos v'chada b'yola. Yeah, indeed, there are two sources. One source applies to a chatas, and one source applies to an ola, excluding this person from bringing it. Utzrichen, you need both. Diashmin chatas, if we only talked about the chatas, have mishum de lachaparahu. What's the purpose of a chatas? To atone for the sin, right? So then you would say, okay, I understand. There's a machlokas here. If he's a mumar for that particular sin, ola the daran huben, ola has nothing to do with a particular sin. It's a gift to the Ron Shalom. Ema lekabel we would say, go ahead and take the carbon. Ola. Okay, so what? Maybe you should only tell us about the ola mishum delav chiyuvahu. An ola is voluntary. I mean, not a communal ola, but a personal ola. Is voluntary. So maybe we'll say, look, this guy's a sinner. We're not interested in having sinners participate in the sacrifices. He's out. But when it comes to a chatos, he's required. It's a chatos l'chiyuvahu. Chatos, he's obligated. We're not going to prevent the guy from bringing the chatos, which he's obligated in. Let him give the garment tzricha. So that's why we have the two sources which tell us in either case, Ola or Chatos, we don't accept a carbon from a Mumar. Okay. Before in the first brisa we said Mikala Behema means someone who behaves like an animal, right? Is that really how we interpret that? V'aksiv Adam Behema Toshia Hashem. This is you'll recognize this from the paragraph we say after Shemona Esrei of Shabbos Mincha. God will save man and beast. Who are the beasts here? They're people who are shehein arumim das. They're clever. They know things. And they behave like animals. And here it means they behave humbly like animals in a positive sense. Okay, why in the case, why does the Brisa interpret Mikol HaBehema as in a negative sense, a person who behaves like an animal in a negative way? So Gemara says Hasam Ksiv Adam Behema, because there it says man and beast, right? Hacha Behema L'chudei Ksiv. So there, it's clearly talking about a positive attributes like humans, like some significant things. So behema can be interpreted as something positive, but in the case of Mikol HaBehema, we can interpret differently. Okay, so the Gemara says fine. So let's find other examples where the same pasuk says Adam u'behema. Haksiv is written V'zaratias Beis Yisrael Zera Adam V'zera Behema. I will plant the house of the people of Israel with the seed of man and beast. And there the Gemara doesn't mention, but there the Gemara understands that behema means ignorant people. So it is a negative thing. So Adam behema can refer to negative traits. So Gemara says Hasam hachalke likra. It doesn't say Adam behema. It says Zera Adam Zera behema. Zera Adam l'chud Zera behema l'chud. So then you can interpret it in a positive way. But if it just says Adam behema, I'm sorry, there you can interpret it in a negative way, but if it just says Adam and Behema, you'd have to say Behema like the Adam. They're both positive traits. Now we're going to go back and look at the Shlita of a Kuti. Rav Yaakov bar Idiam Rav Yeshua ben Levi Mishum bar Kapara. We have a long tradition. Rav Gamliel Veistino Ninu Ashlitas Kuti. The court of Rav Gamliel took a vote on whether the Shlita of a Kuti is acceptable, and they said no. Amar le Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yaakov bar Ides, Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Yaakov, Shemel Shama Rabbi Ela b'She'en Yisrael Omen al Gabav. Maybe that was not a case where the Kuti was being supervised, like our Mishnah says, but maybe it's a case where the Kuti was alone when he did the Shlita. Maybe that's when you don't accept it, but if Yisrael Omen al Gabav would be okay. Amalei, he answered, Dame Haimer Rabbanan could logomiri in Shishmata. You seem like you're talking like somebody who never learned anything. B'she'en Yisrael Omed al Gabav l'meimer boy. Right? If there's no mashgiach there, you're gonna have to say such a thing. Like it's obvious that that's not a good shechita. If Rabbi Gamliel said they had to take a vote on whether the shechita of a kuti is okay, it must have been even the shechita of a supervised kuti, because certainly everybody would have known that an unsupervised kuti is not reliable. So did he accept? Did Reb Zera accept this rebuke? Tashma, let's see. The Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak Ravasi. Ani reisis Rabbi Yochanan she'achal mishchitas kuti. Rabbi Nachman says, I saw Rabbi Yochanan eat from a kuti butcher. Af Rabbi Asi achal mishchitas kuti. And I also saw Rav Asi do so. But Rabbi Zera wondered why this was, like why they did so. Lo shemilahu, is it because they didn't know that Rabbi Gamliel said it's asur? Do you have a shamilu having the If they knew that Rabbi Gamliel had said so, had said it's also, then they would have not done it. But the only shamilu, maybe they did hear, maybe they did know about Rabbi Gamliel's ruling, and they disagreed. Hadar Pasha Linashi. Then he later answered his own question. Mistabra makes sense. The shamilu l'kabla, that they knew about this ruling, but they didn't accept it. If you think that maybe they did not hear about it, and had they heard about it, they would have accepted Rabban Gamliel's isur. Um, um, like so, in other words, if they accidentally ate, if they didn't know that it was usher and they ate it, how could that happen? Hashna behamton shel tzadikim and Hakadosh Baruch Hu maybe takal hayadim. We have a principle that Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't even allow the animals of a tzaddik to stumble, right? To cause a negative thing to happen. Tzaddik and asmal kol shekain. So how could it be that that they that they stumbled into eating meat that really wasn't kosher, and that if they had known about Rabban Gamliel's ruling, they wouldn't have eaten it. So, like, how could it be that that such a thing occurred? So therefore, therefore we understand that Rabbi Zera understood that they thought that they ruled differently than Rabbi Gamliel, and to them it was kosher.
Didn't we say that earlier about the supervision? That if a person said the beginning of the Gemara, the person said that he did it properly, we believe him.
Yeah, but wait, what was even without
Well, there was a whole discussion afterwards about supervision. But if he says I did it, I don't remember the exact lashon there, but it said we weren't sure, it wasn't seen. It wasn't seen. He says I did it. I did it properly. Then we believe him, right? What was that referring to another case? That's what I'm not sure.
Oh,
Was it not a kuti?
Yeah, I vaguely remember the case you're referring to, but I don't remember the answer to your question. Just a second. Look back at the Mishnah.
Was
I know it was just yesterday, right? Or the day before. Um,
I'm looking for it myself.
um,
I just remember that we said that if he says we believe him, but what was the case?
there was the case of you test him by feeding him some of his own shechita and see if he
Okay, that's
wants.
I mean,
Right.
that's a way to test him, but
Right. So I think the case there was someone if that was in the with the understanding that the kuti himself eats kosher, and therefore you can test him, but he doesn't care to do shechita for other people. So you can test him by seeing if he'll eat his own meat. Right? If he eats it, then you know that he did it okay because he himself eats kosher. But here, but that's not necessarily the case. We had two possibilities: whether we believe that kutim are considered to be kosher eating or not. Good question, though. Okay, let's just finish up. Top of Vav Amud Aleph. And if you think that Rabbi Zera did not accept Rabbi Yaakov's rebuke. Lishanile could have answered, "Kan b'Yisrael omed al gabov, kan b'shei Yisrael omed al gabov." He could have answered, "No, the distinction in the cases is whether whether the kuti was supervised." So he must be that he accepted what Rabbi Yaakov wrote. He said Shmamina. Okay, we'll stop.
So we're saying he was supervised here. What are we saying?
No, because we're saying that if he was not supervised, it's obvious that the shlita is no good. Rabban Gamliel's case was where the kuti was supervised. Rabban Gamliel said it's not kosher, and Rabbi Zera wanted to say it's kosher, and then he backed down because of the Anakosh Baruch Hu maybe takal al yado.
So then, even if he was supervised, he would not hold that as kosher.
Rabbi Gamliel would say yes, that's right. Right. It was subject to debate, and they decided in the court of Rabbi Gamliel it's not kosher.
So in general, are we to learn from this that if a non-Jew shechs an animal, even though he's supervised, it would not be kosher, would not be acceptable?
Okay, so first of all, kuti and non-Jew are separate categories. I don't know if there's anyone today who you would put in the category of kuti.
Yeah, okay, but a kuti was really someone who was forced to convert, right?
There are
Yeah.
Samaritans, and there are about 1,000 of them.
Okay, yes, I take that back, but I don't think you'll find any in local kosher restaurants.
Yeah, they do not consider themselves to be Jews. But more importantly, halal slaughter is identical to kosher slaughter.
Right.
And there are 1 billion Muslims in the world, and they can eat our slaughtered meat, but we can't eat theirs.
Right. But I think the reason is that the details of halal are not sufficiently strict to pass the shechita test.
It's identical. It's
Is it really?
absolutely.
Oh, okay. So it's a question of nemanus?
Yeah, the only difference is that a shochet can make a single bracha covering multiple animals, and I think the halal shochet has to make a bracha on each animal.
Uh-huh.
But it is absolutely identical, which is why the attempts.
Even the details of like shahiyah and drisa and so on?
Yeah, no, I don't know about the inspection of the animal afterwards,
Uh-huh.
but the slaughter itself is identical, and that is why the attempts by some European Muslim haters to ban halal slaughter has resulted in the end of kosher slaughter,
Right.
which is a problem for us.
It is indeed.
It may eventually be that shechita is banned all over Europe.
Are you saying that Europe is becoming a place where we're problematic to be Jewish?
Europe has been a place that's problematic to be Jewish for a very long time.
Long time. Okay. All
So
right.
even if we don't make a distinction, or if we do make a distinction here, are we saying then of a non-Jew or a kuti, in any case, either one, that their shechita would not be valid according to Rabbi Gamliel? Even if it's supervised.
Kuti and non-Jew are different categories.
I understand that. So are we saying in both cases? Are we saying either case or one case that even if they was supervised according to Rabbi Gamliel would not be kosher?
For the case of a kuti, that's right. Well, kuti has an advantage in that he's considered by the Gemara to be Jewish in a sense, right? Although not an ideal sense. So
elsewhere,
I don't think you could apply the kuti rules necessarily to an Ovid Kochavim. You'd have to look for sources specific to Ovid Kochavim. And that's not what we're dealing with here in the case of Rabban Gamliel's court. You'd have to find other sources.
But the modern Samaritans are definitely not idol worshippers, but they are definitely not Jews, and we cannot eat their shechita.
Right.
Yeah, and we cannot marry them unless they convert.
Okay.
Whereas for example, a Karaite, we can marry a Karaite, but we cannot marry a Samaritan.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, the ruling in by some Rishon. I think it was Rabbi Avraham ben Harambam, who ruled a rabbinic Jew can marry a Karaite, but the Karaite has to essentially become a rabbinic Jew, and that was actually what Rabbi Bagi Yosef used to declare the Ethiopian Jews to be full Jews.
Oh, how so?
Well, they didn't have the oral Torah, and
Oh,
he
so you put them in the category of Karaites.
put them in the Karaites. Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
Sharad
I'd forgotten that. Yeah,
too.
now that you mentioned it, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, a very imaginative ruling, and now there are lots of Ethiopian Jews in Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. All right,
Have a good day, everybody.
all the best.
Bye.